Hey, it's Don the Auction Professor here. Today I'm going to talk about records. This is a real good bolo for us, but I'm going to just talk about 78 records and earlier ones, the better ones to look for, the ones that are going to get you a better return on your investment for what you're going to find. For the most part, you're not going to find an Elvis on a 78 or a Chuck Berry or something on a 78. You're going to find these type of records, which we're going to show you today. But I'm going to show you some key factors to look for, some types of music, some designations, some things that are on the records that'll steer you in the right direction to buy the specific kind. So we're going to go over the screen and we're going to talk about that right now. Today we're going to talk about 78 records. Most of the high dollar ones are R&B, jazz, or early rock and roll. I've tried to pick the most expensive ones this time to pique your interest, to show you the ones that I look for. I have found most everyone that you are going to see today at least once in my life. You're not going to find most of these all the time, and you're going to have to really dig. But again, these do show up. A lot of people don't mess with 78s, and that's why I can find high dollar ones, or they simply won't know how to price them or look them up. They'll look on eBay, they won't see something the same, and they'll think they're not worth much because no one's listed them. Or even they'll look at Discogs. A lot of people aren't even familiar with Pop Psych, and even Pop Psych does not have every one of these records up. They also purge their past ones too, so they'll only have them up for so many years before they purge them, so you won't be able to see some of these earlier ones that they just don't show up that often. So most of these are in price guides, though. Robert Johnson is by far the most collected, the most expensive 78 record you can get on eBay at any given time. There's some that go for more than that, some early Bix or something, or Wolverton Orchestra, but Robert Johnson by far is the highest dollar one. There's some that are on some labels that go up to $10,000 for one single record. Vocalion is one that I do run into this label. I've had a few Robert Johnsons, not this nice and not this expensive, but they are going to show up. Most people don't realize that. Most people don't see it. They think, oh, it's just not worth anything, as I said. So I do find more 78s than any other high-priced record out on the market. 45s is second. I find more 45s than LPs. LPs is the least one I look for the least. LPs just don't sell as well as they used to because of all the reproductions and the rehashes and the imports and all the fine hi-fi disc collectors and audiophile collectors. So anyway, this is what I look for the most, are these Vocalions and Robert Johnsons and such forth. This one went for $6,400. Almost $6,500. Hopefully that woke you up there, because these are not crazy prices at all. And I know I'll get somebody saying, well, I'm never going to find these. I've found these records myself, some of these. Across the gambit, I've found Robert Johnson on many occasions. I've sold them for thousands on many occasions. I found early Elvis. I found early jazz. I found early OK records. I've had some on Scroll worth thousands. The Jug bands worth thousands. They do show up, but you've got to look for them. You've got to look outside the source. You've got to know your records to be able to cut your time down too. Big bulk lots of 78 show up fairly often for us. If they show up here, they sure as heck show up in other places in the country. I know other people who buy comparable material as I do and sell on eBay as well and do find these same similar $1,000 plus records. So again, you can find them. Don't think it's crazy. I know I'll get the hate mail, and I know I'll get people telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do this for a living. I know what I find, and this is part of what we find occasionally. So again, Robert Johnson here. The top 5 or 6 are almost always Robert Johnson. Just FYI across the board. Anytime you do a comp search, type in 78 in records, you're going to see mostly Robert Johnson at the top. This one's $5,877. Me and the Devil Blues. It's all R&B blues, a guitar and hymn singing. This is the old fable, the blues musician sold his soul to the devil. He disappeared and came back, and then he could play. They touch on it in the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? As well, too. So this is a known thing. Robert Johnson's the man. He is the king of the blues as far as I'm concerned, the Delta Blues area as well. This is the bomb right here, $5,877, almost $6,000 as well. Here's another Robert Johnson, Stop Breaking Down Blues. They're all like this. They're all fab killer blues string instrumentals with guitars. All of his. And these are just exceptional quality. Somebody probably got these very cheap, would be my honest guess from the way I see these show up. You know, if it's somebody like me getting to the records first as opposed to a dealer or something, I'm going to nab these. And that's how I get them, because dealers don't mess too much with the 78s unless they're R&B, like 50s, 60s, like rockers, doo-wop, soul type. Not these early ones. These are pre-war, 20s, 30s era. Delta Blues, as I said, $4,600. Another Vocalion. Last Fair Deal Gone Down. This is just typical what you see. They're mostly blues, 3220 blues. A lot of, struggling and things going along in this area. This is a poor area. He talks about, his actual life and, the hardships and such forth. If you haven't heard him, go onto YouTube, type in Robert Johnson and just type in the blues and listen to some of Robert Johnson so you know what they are. $4,309. You just can't beat these records. Now we're going to go into this is called a Scroll Victor, and I've talked about Scroll Victors before. Anything that says Jug Band, Jug Stompers, or just with the word jug is usually a good record. I don't care who the musician is, it's worth $100 or better for the most part, every one. The Jug Stompers is a typical, name you'll see. Gus Cannon is the key here. Prison Wall Blues, same era, 20s and 30s, pre-war. Wolf River Blues, I believe, is on the back. Yes, Wolf River Blues. This is just key. All of these. I look for this specific label. Again, I can't tell you if you just buy this label that you're going to do all right, because there's many that aren't worth anything on this label. It's almost always the blues, and there's even a bunch that say blues that aren't worth anything either. But the one key I can tell you, jug. Look for jug stompers, jug blowers, anything like that. It's literally a whiskey jug that they are blowing into and making noise with in the background. These were recorded without any digital, so it's literally whatever was picked up in the room. Jugs were loud. You can hear them in there. It's analog. It's really early recorded. You can hear the people moving around and foot scratching sometimes on the floor and things like that. I like that. It's interesting to me. But this one's $23.46. Now, this is Black Patty label. Pretty much any Black Patty label I would buy. This is one of the rare exceptions. It's an ethnic label. Most of the performers are African American. High Towers, Nighthawks. It's a classic. That's all I can tell you on this one. You can hear probably this one online as well, too. I've listened to most of these. When I find a record and I don't know, and I don't feel like throwing it on a turntable, I'll usually listen to it on YouTube just to get the gist of it. Obviously, I play the high dollar ones personally just to make sure they're good. But this is another key one. Black Patty is a good label. I've had some on there that are only worth $15 or $20, but almost every one, if you pay $1 for a Black Patty, is worth $15 for the most part. Let's see here. Let's move on. Paramount's another label. I'm not sure if this is related to the Paramount Pictures or not, but I do see this one fairly often as well, too. Anyway, so this is another one that I look for. Beale Street Sheiks. Most of the ones that say chic or Sheiks on them are a better one. There's more than just Beale Street Sheiks as well. Jazz and the Blues, these are typical songs. Many people do the same song. I think he's got the same side shown on here twice, it looks like. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what the other side was. But in many cases, there's two different performers on the same disc when you get back to this era. So maybe only one side's worth anything and the other side's just a junk one here. Let's see if he does say what's on the other side. Paramount's a fairly common label. Let's see. Very tight, tiny hair, crack at edge. There's a crack on this one, too. So just FYI. Even with the crack, half-inch last go-round, no effect. Wrench into the grooves, that is completely inaudible. Yeah, it's got a crack on both sides that runs through it. Now, on some of these, like the early, even some of the Paramounts, mostly the early, like RCA and stuff, or Columbia specifically, they're laminated, and you'll see a crack that may only go through one side, believe it or not, because I think there's like a sheet or something in the middle, and then there's two pressed sides of shellac. These records are shellac. They are not vinyl. Shellac like you'd see in someone's furniture or something like that. So anyway, that's pretty much what I see on these. And as I said, Paramount's not a super rare label. I see Paramount all the time. Again, I can't tell you just to buy Paramount records. There's very few labels that I can tell you just to buy. Even some of the Sun record labels, and I'm going to show you one in just a second here, like this label here, depending on the performer, even on a 78, it may not be all that good of a record to buy. It just depends. Some are only worth 15 or 20 bucks. There's some copies of this one as well, too, forgeries on this specific one. This one looks pretty darn good to me from what I see and have seen. So anyway, I don't know what that is, I guess. What the heck he's got showing there. Let's see what he's got written down there. Edge crack repaired on the record. So there's a repaired. It has been glued. Yeah, the records are nice. Again, you can sell them on a cracked disc, $2,000. So you can see that it would go for more had it not been cracked. Let's see if you can see the crack. Probably not. Yeah, you can see it over there in the top left. It's a bad crack. It's more than a crack. It looks like a piece has actually been broken off and then re-glued. It still went for $2,000. That's how rare this record is. It states it's owned by Al Freed. I wouldn't be able to verify that, so I wouldn't base anything on that. Now here's another Vocal Lion. Luke High Night Ozark Strutters. This is another one of those, blues, Fort Smith breakdown. Any of the ones that say breakdown are usually like a bluesy song or bluesy sound. And this one, again, they're pushing it towards the one side being the issue. Memphis Blues, that's typical. $1,713. Hopefully this one isn't cracked too, because two of the top ones are cracked. Two amazing sizes are like the Charlie Pattons of early country collecting. Yeah, the Charlie Patton's fairly expensive too. But anyway, this one looks like a good solid record. Circa 1932, as you see. Now here's a picture disc. There's many picture discs as well too. We get them quite often. There's different varieties and different brands, so I'm not going to mess with those today. We'll probably touch on those in another one. This is just one example of Jimmy Rogers in a rare disc. This is rarer than most every picture disc you will see, other than some Disney ones from like Cinderella. It's a standard one. This would have been on a scroll label like I showed just a few minutes ago. I've only seen one of these in person. Couldn't afford it. I wouldn't have spent $1,000 on it for making a couple bucks on it. But this is a primo copy here. There are picture discs like this for many performers as well, too. Here's another Elvis, Mount Cow Blues Boogie. This is a classic one as well, too. Good condition without worrying faults. Let me see if they got any other issues down here. Pressed with 72 in dead wax. You'll see that first Memphis pressing. There's numbers and dates and things, ways to tell which one's which pressing. They were pressed a couple of times, don't forget. So this one's $1,209. And it depends on the exact record of Elvis. Some are worth more than other ones. So just keep that in mind. That's All Right Mama is one of the first ones he did. He sung it for his mom. So that one's usually worth more. It just because it's Elvis and Son doesn't mean they're all worth $2,000. Just keep that in mind. 7-foot Dilly. Now this is a Tennessee Mountain Rag. You've got to know a little something to be playing in this game if you're going to spend big money. But again, these are records that you can find, in big bulk lots. That's what I can tell you. That's where I find most of mine, in big lots. And as I said, I don't buy a lot unless I know I'm going to get some money out of it. If I'm going to make a profit. I don't usually take a shot for $500-600 on a huge lot of a couple thousand discs. I'll look. Sometimes I find one disc right away that's worth everything all off the bat, a $1,000 record. And it does happen quite often. Once a month or better, I get a disc worth $1,000, whether it's a 78 or a 45. If you don't look, you're not going to find them. If you just keep saying, no one's going to find these, you're not going to find them. You're just going to give up. That's why many people give up, because they don't think they can do it, or they think this is a fantasy life or something. But this is how I make a living. $1,000 for this one here, too. Now, this is a Parlophone. I've talked about some 78s in a couple other videos. The only way you're going to find a 78 on the Beatles is from India or someplace like that. And here's a perfect example. They used older equipment, or that was what was readily available over there. So to sell more of them, you're going to have to print them in a format that is readily available. 78s had been out for a while at this point, so there was more 78 players. So they did still press them for some of these. I shouldn't say third world market, but it's a secondary market for the most part. So, and I've had some of these, believe it or not. $1,000. I bought a huge lot, and I got a bunch of these at one point. We made $10,000-$15,000 from one purchase on just some Beatles records. Now, here is what's called a Columbia D. This is a 20s, early 30s, pre-war Columbia record. It has a -D. That is usually what most people look for. Now, they're not all worth money. There's some comedy ones and stuff that are just junk. But a lot of the Columbia D labels, whatever it is, like 129D, any of these early labels with D on it are well worth looking at. They don't have to be jazz. Some of the, violin ones sell. Some of the classicals sell. This one, just looking at it, you can tell it's a primo copy. Probably never been played. It's probably like an E++, which is like one of the best records you can get. It's like as mint as you can find. It's a key one here, $1,000. Most of the Columbia Ds that are worth money are going to be jazz or blues, though. Here's another one, Charlie Poole, and he's with the North Carolina Ramblers. A lot of the ones that say Ramblers are usually worth messing with, too. Again, it says blues. It's a Columbia D label. It's a later one, but it's still a Columbia D. The lower the number, the earlier it was pressed on these. So if it was like 101D, it might actually not even be on one. It might be on a ribbon label, but it's still going to say D. There's a ribbon label on some of these, too, that's earlier than this label. This is not the first Columbia label by far. There was many other versions prior to this that go way back to the 1890s, so $877 on this one. These labels I'm showing are all labels worth looking for, but you're not going to find the best stuff when you first start off. You're going to have some mistakes and some things like that. Banjo and blues and guitar go together very well. Down South Blues, Doc Boggs. Someone you'll know on this one. I would definitely hope you would recognize the name. This one sold $768. No problem whatsoever. It's a nice disc. Probably as nice as you'll find they have. Their grading on this, their scale isn't exactly the full scale, because there's a V minus, a V, a V plus, an E minus, an E plus, an N minus, an N, and an N plus, basically are the gist of the grading scale on these. Records like 78s are graded differently by true audiophiles than they would be 45. So anyway, I've got several videos just on grading records too. I would honestly recommend you checking it out. I go into details and I try to explain what the differences are. So anyway, this one's 768. Again, Scroll Victor. And as I said, jug band. It doesn't matter, Memphis jug band or what. It's a jug band. Pop Along Blues. Another bluesy Delta-style song. Really good one. Again, I look for this label on everything. If I see this label, I know I'm in the right era. Right off the bat, this is what you want to look for. There's a Batwing label from Victor as well. It's fairly good in about the same era. But the Scroll Victor seems to sell better. It's earlier for the most part. 720 on that one. Here's a Jeanette. State Street Ramblers. And again, Ramblers, the term Ramblers can mean a lot to it. Jeanette has many different labels. Some of them are worth well more than others. The Electro Beam are usually better ones. There's some later ones that are blue that aren't as fancy with the scroll on it, and I don't mess with too many of those unless I'm buying them in a bulk. But 710 on this one. And again, these are not crazy prices. These are honest, full-fledged, honest prices that you can get for these. You can find these. You know, it's not a scarcity to find a bunch of good records. You just have to be diligent. You're not going to find them all the time, but it only takes one good lot to make your month or to make your year on records. I'm telling you, it's just that way. You know, I might go a month or two without finding a huge hoard, but I'm still finding good records, in lots. Maybe not huge lots, but we try to buy lots, 5,000 or 10,000 records at a time. That is always the best way for us. Now, if you're new to this, don't do it. I'm warning you. You're going to sink 500 to 1,000 to a bunch of records and not be able to get your money back right away if you don't know what you're doing, because a lot of people like us will sit there and then, sort through those records, every one of them, pull out every good record, and then sell the bulk to somebody else. Chances are, if I went through it, there's not going to be much left. Some people just go through and only buy the rock and rockabilly and the R&B, the ones they know, and then they leave the obscure, the exotic, and stuff like that too. So that's how this game works for us. Quantity is always best. 700 on Rufus Thomas. He performed on 45s all the way up into, I think, 60s or 70s. So this is the same Rufus Thomas that you should know of and have heard of anyway. Good one here. Another Son. Now here's Ray Harris, Another Son. Come On Little Mama. It's the same type of music. It's rockabilly blues. R&B kind of style stuff. It's a stomper. It's $1,000 for this one here. Another Sun record, James Cotton. And I find these records too, not just on 78, but on 45s that are worth decent money too. All the Sun records were issued on 78s and 45s for the most part. There's a few rare ones that I guess no one's been able to produce a copy of a 45 of that may still exist, but there are just not many of them out there. So this was a small-time label at one time, so they didn't press a ton of everything you will see. So just keep that in mind. Hold Me in Your Arms is the key one here. $700 US. Another Scroll Victor, another Memphis Jug Band. Again, Jug Band. The vocal refrain on many times is sung by who knows who. Many different people do them. I don't really even worry about the vocal refrain when it's a jug band. I just buy it. Jug bands always sell, especially on the Scroll Victor label or Columbia D or the OK label, and we're going to show you a few of those in a minute here. $749.99, $750 for this one. Meade Lux Lewis. Now, most Meade Lux Lewises aren't worth a dime, basically. You might if you get an album set of 78s that have 3 or 4 78 records in it. But this is Honky Tonk Train Blues. Very rare. On Paramount, too. Again, these labels you're going to see. You're going to see this person, but unless you know the specific track, don't spend anything hardly on these things. $1 or less. You're going to end up losing if you just think you're going to be getting something because it's Meade Lux on a Paramount label. It does not work that way. Elvis on a 78, you're fairly safe unless it's a repro, which do exist, as I said. Cotton doesn't exist, though, on a 78 reshoot, though, so just FYI. Floyd Ming and Pep Steppers. Now, the Pep Steppers is a key sign that this is probably a good one. Indian War Whoop, Country Dance. Let's see if they show the other side or not. Nope, he's pushing it just on this one side. Again, who knows what's on the other side on some of these. It's that song that most people want. $662 on this one. 14 bids. He's charging way more than me, too, on shipping. Now, here's an OK label. This is another one you should always look for. Look for this label. King Oliver's Jazz Band. Most of his aren't worth a ton of money, especially if they're on a different label, but this is the early one. This label here is what you want to look for. And I'm going to show you another one by on this label as well in just a minute here, but this is basically $600. Another thing to look for is Blind Anything. If it says Blind or anything like that, Ledbetter or Mississippi John or Alabama Will or Philadelphia Pete or anything like that, any of those are usually worth some money right off the bat. Charlie Feathers, another one. Any Charlie Feathers on a 78 is usually worth hundreds of dollars. That's a few of the ones that I do can say that are worth money. Like an Elvis 78 I would buy unless, you know, it's broken or something bad to it. But Charlie Feathers is another one. Blind Lemon Jefferson I always buy. Anyone pretty much by him is good. He's one of the exceptions. Again, there's very few exceptions. Most of the time you have to find a specific label. There are some Blind Lemon Jefferson that are like pressings that were pressed in the 40s. Those aren't worth anywhere near as much, so keep them to these early labels here. Again, these are not insane prices. I promise you. Go to Pop Psych and look yourself and see how many thousands of these have sold for good money. Lots of them. So you're not going to find, you know, like other people say, 10, 20, 30 of the same record that hasn't sold. You're going to find Blind Lemon Jefferson, and everyone's probably sold on eBay. Every Son Elvis is going to have sold. You know, these are just key things that you will always see. So anyway. And here's another, okay, this is a True Tone label, Louis Armstrong and his Hot 5. That is the difference on most of these. You want the ones that say Hot 5 with Louis Armstrong, because a lot of Louis Armstrongs aren't worth a ton of money. Some of them are, but for the most part, I try to get the ones that are Hot 5 or Stompers or something like that on them. This is Sunset Cafe Stomp. A lot of these were from like a musical or something along that line too. So any of these early OK red labels like this I look for. There's a couple other colored versions of this label too that I look for. This one's $561. I could show you 78 records all day long just on eBay and still be in the hundreds of dollars on records. You know, I've just picked a few select ones. I've had this exact record before. I got $475 for the last one that I sold. It wasn't quite this good, obviously, so condition is everything. Once you've done this enough, you will understand which ones to look for. You should get a good gist on it. You should have Pop Psych on your phone, Discogs on your phone. You should be able to, know some basic gist on it. So just keep that in mind on this. Anyway, this is basically the key ones that I would look for label-wise. There's other labels too as well. But again, these are all U.S. pressings, mostly what I buy. You know, these are key ones that I look for. Just exceptional quality records on these. And again, as I said, I do find these occasionally. You know, once a month I'll get a real high price record. Almost every single month. Sometimes I'll get a couple in the same assortment. You know, I've bought many records that go for $4,000 plus. You know, it's just something that you're going to run into. It's going to make your day. It's going to make your month. You know, this is treasure hunting 101 to me. You know, I look for these wherever I go. You can find some 78s at Savers. You can find them sometimes at Goodwill. Mostly you're going to have to go to the Goodwill auctions. Savers must do something else with them because I know they get them, but most of the time I don't see them out. Somebody told me that Savers is starting to auction or contract them out to somebody else. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I heard it from an insider. So if anybody else has heard that too, please leave some comments down below. But I know Goodwill puts all this stuff at auction, even locally. They go for more than I could get them for, even on eBay around here. No idea why. I don't mess with the auctions in this state. I have seen some from other states that do the same thing. Again, I have no idea why they go for this kind of money. But they always seem to do that. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some real good thoughts on this. Hopefully that really piqued your interest and has got you thinking about records, looking for sources for them and such forth. Record shows would not be a good source. Most people will look up the records and know what they are. This person knows what he's doing. I've actually sold him some in the past myself. So anyway, most record dealers at a record show will know what they're doing. You'll be hard-pressed to get a good record from a record show, just like a postcard show. I can find them occasionally, something worth at least reselling, but for the most part, I don't mess with them there. I'm looking at estate sales, live auctions, flea markets, garage sales, Craigslist, Facebook postings. You know, most of the time, though, I don't find good ones on Craigslist or Facebook anymore these days. So, you know, I do have pickers, so that is my #1 source for finding this stuff. So anyway, that's what I have for you. Well, there you go. That's an area that I do very well, and we make a lot of money in this category. Vintage 78 records are a big plus for us. Again, you have to know how to ship them properly. They are very fragile. I've got several videos on shipping. I'll have a link up here to one of them right now. Check that out, too, if you're going to ship and want to do records. Look what you have to do just to ship these things before you even think about buying them. That is my biggest recommendation. But that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.